Hotep family, welcome back to week number 4, Keenan Booker, Voodoo edition. And there's the man. He just stepped away, but he will be right back after this commercial break.
I'm gonna hit you right back after this show.
All right, I'm right back.
Come on.
What's going on?
Lord. Oh, shit. Do you know what I be going through daily? Oh my God!
I can only imagine, but then again, maybe not, bro.
Amputate my arms and my legs and throw my body parts all across the globe. I tell you,
no, we can't have that. We can't have that.
You know,
we can't have it.
Here
we can't have you out here repping like a SAR, trying to put you back together again.
Right. Bro. So, it's hot energy. We were just discussing the movie They Cloned Tyrone, and I was talking with Brother Philip earlier, and he stated, this is the real nigga etiquette. This is the Voodoo edition. This is, and I asked him, do you think the root mechanism of what we're talking about, do you think that is the Matrix? And what I've been doing with the words and how I've been showing people who have been alive in other time periods and what their system was. And he was like, yeah. So one thing that I thought was interesting, and I'm just going to present this before we get to moving, was the movie Clone Tyrone. The second time I watched this, you got to watch that movie 2-3 times to catch everything, because there's a lot of stuff. It's max.
What do they call those? Packed. They call those goose eggs or golden eggs. Or
oh my God. It's packed with all types of layers of science.
Symbolism, everything.
Right. Symbolism, everything. So one thing that I caught that I have to present today, which matches in with what Philip was speaking about, was
and why don't you call me Philippe? It ain't Philip, bro.
Oh, it's Philippe. Okay, Philippe. Yeah. Okay, my bad.
Like, you know, I don't know what it is. Some people call me Felipe, and I'm like, before you get to the pay, you got to get to the Philippe before you can put the pay on it.
Yeah.
What the hell?
You have to feel. So, okay, right.
And damn, don't call me Phil. I will
Reverend Shock is what I'm gonna do. So Reverend Shock. Okay. So. But one thing that Reverend Shock mentioned was, you know, this is the Voodoo edition. And what was really ironic was when I watched the movie the second time, there's a scene where the alcoholic in front of the store in the ghetto was like, let me get some water. He said, let me get some water. And he poured him a little bit of his 40 ounce in his cup. And then when he looked up, there was a dude walking down the street, looked like he had been shot in his chest. The black truck pulls up and carries him off. And I saw the name of the street right there was Lethe. Okay. And I said, now I know my words, and that's not a common name for a street. So let me go look this word up and see what
how was it spelled, beloved? What was it spelled?
Lethe. Okay.
So and that's pronounced.
I don't know if it's pronounced Leth or Leith or
Leth machine, like a Let. CNC Leth machine.
Right. It could be Leth. It could be Leith. It could be, you know, it's an ancient Greek word. Okay. And watch what I'm about to show you. So let me share screen here real quick. Okay. So this is Leth. Okay. And right here, it says, in Greek mythology, also referred to as Lesmosine, was one of the 5 rivers of the underworld of Hades, also known as Ameles, Potamos, the river of unmindfulness. You see that?
Wow.
The Lethe flowed around the cave of Hypnos. You see this?
Wow.
Hypnos. And through the underworld, where all those who drank from it experienced complete forgetfulness.
You're crazy, man, with this. You're crazy with this, kid.
Now it says Lethe was also the name of the Greek spirit of forgetfulness and oblivion.
With my.
With
now
whom
tell
the
me
river
that's not
was
what they're trying to do to the black community.
Well, yeah, and I'll show you how it was done. Watch this. With whom the river was often identified. In classical Greek, the word Lethe literally means oblivion, forgetfulness, or concealment. Okay, which is clone. It is related to the Greek word for truth. Okay, so in the Greek mythology system, which is what we're living in right now underneath Europeans, concealment, forgetfulness, and oblivion is also connected to truth.
My.
Okay, because you hide the truth. We live off of lies, is what's going on here.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So, which through the pervasive alpha literally means unforgetfulness or unconcealment. The privative alpha, okay, that's a whole nother thing. Literally means unforgetfulness. So, alpha male. The alpha male can't live off of the concealment and the bullshit. We have to be detailed with how we operate in order to pay the bills.
Right.
Okay. Now we see this word LETHE. You see that? Now watch this. Okay. Now this is important too, because on that same street, the prostitute was there. And you see this right here? Lethe genius, a butterfly genus in the family of Nymphalidae. So that's
wow, for your nymphomaniac and all.
Right,
Okay.
right. So the butterfly, which was also on the Venus sable, is connected to being a nympho. It's the butterfly. It's the, not flying directly, which is also mirrored to the moth, because that's the light side. The dark side is the moth in the back.
Right.
Okay. Which also do not fly in a straight line.
Right.
You see, all birds can fly in a straight line. So that is a symbol of the chaos and the undirective activity that can also be incorporated in these type of females who operate in those fashions. Okay. Now, when we go Lethe, watch this. Lethe, Jamaica. You see that?
Stop it. Stop
Lethe
it.
rafting, Jamaica. Okay. So what happened here is, watch me go out. St. James Parish right there. Okay, Hanover Parish. Okay, boom, Jamaica. You see? So leaving from Africa, landing in Jamaica, or going through this zone put us in a state of what? Forgetfulness.
My.
You see that?
And that is why we do webinars with Keenan.
Do you see this? But man, you got to understand the power of these words and where these words are applied. Okay. Who knew that the butterfly was a sign of the nympho and is also called by genus in the name Nymphalidae? Okay. You see that?
Unbelievable.
So what, the Reverend Shock spoke out of his unconscious matrix is that this is the voodoo, because you have to understand the black space inside the human, right? The black space in the human, the unconscious zone that we do sometimes speak from, is the true line of the matrix. That's why, a bum yells something to you, somebody that you don't know, when they're speaking to you and they say something profound that may be going on in your life right now, or may have had happened in your life right now. That is the matrix talking to you. That is not that person. Okay. And then at the same time, we don't know what others know about you due to the fact of what the internet has allowed. And also what, people think spying and being CSI is cool nowadays. You see what I'm saying? Yep. So I just had to bring that to the forefront to show you the in-depthness of understanding that is needed when you create art. And this is part of the reason I go so crazy about hip hop and rap, is because they're using a bunch of words and they do not know the in-depthness of art. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. And what needs to be applied when it comes to certain god names, goddess names, so on and so forth. Art is a studied subject. And when we look at how Boyega played his roles out and how Jewel Taylor directed and wrote the film, we see clearly that art and due diligence of study is needed at all times. Okay?
Because without that, you wouldn't be able to even get into the film.
This is a name of a street in the film. Just the name of a street. This word was not repeated.
That's how deep it goes. That's how deep it goes.
Right. This word was not in the script. It was on a street sign.
So you have to understand the production designer who designed the set.
Come on.
You have to understand the art director who actually hired the production designer. So you have to have the layers, the writers who wrote it, which is, and then the director. It's so many layers of how each piece, the script supervisor, the one that make sure everything is in place when they have to come back 2 days later, 3 weeks later, whatever, and have that same scene. All of that, everybody has to be on one unique page. Phenomenal work. Great research, bro.
Yeah. So that was just in that one word applied on the street, and it was very pertinent to the energy of the film, and obviously it was pertinent to our position here in America and what has happened with us historically.
Sure.
Okay. Now, before we go to the Revolutionaries, I think it's important for me to go over the D. Wolf family. Have you ever heard of them?
I've heard of D. Wolf, but not
Well,
the
the D.
family.
Wolf family is the Diamond family, one of the Diamond families of New York. And when you say D. Wolf, there's two layers to that. You could say the Wolf, which is Thee Wolf, and then you could say D. Wolf, taking away the wolf. Okay. So it's spelled in taking away the wolf, but due to their activity, you can definitely tell that they maintain the wolf. Okay. So there was
no doubt.
Right. And the wolf is a science we went over in the Kicked Out of Heaven Volume 2. So let's get to it. James D. Wolf had brothers Charles, John, William, and Levite, okay, D. Wolf. Their father and uncle Simon, which is also another family of, which is also another line of the 12 children of Jacob in the Israel situation. So their father and uncle Simon Potter were slave traders. His father and uncle had been involved in slave trading since 1769, and his nephew George D. Wolf kept it up illegally until 1820. D. Wolf was 20 years old when he was selected to be a captain of a ship. He immediately began to engage in slave trading. This included purchasing seasoned slaves from Cuba and other ports in the West Indies and transporting them to southern markets in the United States. Now, I got to stop right here because that word seasoned is funny, huh? Right? Seasoned slaves, and we're using seasons, which is herbs, and those herbs are crushed up, mixed up from the plant, which also means that you were exercised and skilled in whatever you have done. You have inculcated a level of perfection, which puts you in the status of achieving expertise, makes you a specialist, so on and so forth. This is seasoned, okay? And now it's the slang word more so than what they would use in the professional realms, okay? Now, Rhode Island outlawed slave trading in 1787. Slave trading and the practice of enslaving are two different things. D. Wolf and his family continued to finance and command slaving voyages to West Africa. D. Wolf financed 25 slaving voyages, usually with other members of his family. In total, the D. Wolf family is believed to have transported more than 11,000 slaves to this country before the United States banned the African slave trade, effective in 1808. D. Wolf was first elected as a member of the Rhode Island House of Representatives in 1798. So you see this? They don't talk about how slave traders were brought into the House of Representatives and into government positions when they shut down the whole slave trading situation or slave ships coming to the coast, okay? And served until 1801. He served again from 1803 to 1812, 1817 to 1821, and 1829 to 1837. He was elected as Speaker of the House from 1819 to 1821. The name D. Wolf is a very strong metaphysic, which comes from the medieval times of old Europe. This can be found in my other book, Kicked Out of Heaven, Volume 2. The wolf is a psychological symbol of uncontrolled ravaging with no perception of consequence. To perceive and worry about a consequence is also to limit your ravaging, which will diminish your gain. He received one of the biggest gains in the end. He worked for the House of Representatives, which also engulfed his slave master energy. When the slave trade was abolished, this family and other slave families assisted in financing the U.S. Navy. So a family who has years and years and years of slave trading financed the U.S. Navy, my friend, okay? And what's really so cold is that the book Black Cargoes, written by Daniel P. Mannix, he comes from a Royal Navy family. And he wrote the book that I used a lot of source material for this one. And also he wrote The History of Torture, which I used for volume 1 of Kicked Out of Heaven. And he also wrote Fox and the Hound. So you were watching Fox and the Hound. Come on, are you with me?
Yeah, okay, bro.
You were watching Fox and the Hound, not knowing that the individual who wrote the book has torture in his system, And he comes from a line of also understanding the details of what went on with the with the slave ships and the whole African slave trade. Okay. The D. Wolf family obviously lived up to their name. If this family was put in place by man or time to carry out the deed, I don't know. But it is very clear that there is some sort of exact alignments going on throughout time that enforced our modern day picture. These alignments are still occurring. So this is the sustenance and the strength that made the U.S. Navy what they are today. Okay. And probably part of the metaphysics on why when you join the Navy, you have to be out on the ocean for 6 months straight. You know, that could be a part of it. You know, your first tour, when you join the Navy, you can either choose the East Coast tour or the West Coast tour, and you have to be out on the water on the ships for 6 months. And usually they're all ravaging. They're going to all the different coasts, messing with all the whores from all the other countries. That's what's known to do as a activity in the U.S. Navy. Okay, so the ravaging commence. Okay, so let's get down to some revolutionaries. And this is what today's show is about the revolutionaries. Okay, so these are the individuals that fought back. We're going to be going through a lot of them. Okay, and what situations tore down certain kingdoms. There were many wars, more wars than what's provided in this book. Wars of the old war. Now that's important. More wars than what's provided in this book, which tells you go search and find, because there's a lot more information out here. Okay. So wars of the old world provided the natural means for the insatiable desire of man to rule over other humans and animals, only because plants are boring and patience is bitter. There will always be disputes. There will always be testosterone. The woman's approach at war is more psychological and lengthy. Alpha males want to prove their might for all to see, whether that be his own person or the many men he may lead. What I see, what I like, I will have, is the will of every living thing, from the mosquito to the eagle to the octopus to the lion. Let's do that again. What I see, what I like, I will have. This is the will of every living thing on this planet, from the mosquito to the eagle to the octopus to the lion. That is survival. Okay. And this is also the law for man. Okay. Now, every living organism on planet Earth is physically equipped for offense and defense. These biological weapons are also used for their survival, to eat, camouflage, build, etc. And humans don't have any of those. Okay. We don't have claws. We don't have gnawing teeth. We don't have all of that, right? So humans do not have anything biologically attached to them that allows them to defend themselves or to offend someone. Some of the oldest human bones found had broken bones from battles, skulls bashed in, marks on the bones from meat being ripped off with a knife, which are signs of cannibalism, and small spearheads in the ribs. Man has always needed a club or a stick, which cocooned into the sword and then matured into a rifle. In between these times, brutality and dominance grew to extremes that today would be considered worse than a horror movie. The point is, there is a natural law that does not understand or include sympathy or weakness. For one to not understand nature while living in nature defines insanity. Do you see that? Did you see that? For one to not understand nature while living in nature defines insanity. You see? Where do we live? We don't live next to farms. We don't understand the operations of the rooster and the hen. We don't understand the operations of the bull and the cow. You see? We live in concrete cities. You see what I'm saying? Go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, I was under the impression that second frequency do have a defense mechanism, and that's the pheromone that they give that others kind of submit to. It's almost like a submission pheromone. That's like the Africans are very submissive. Me and Revs talked about it. You know what I'm talking about, Rev? Remember?
Well, there is a science called the Cant language, and I'm gonna give you all a little bit of that here in a minute. I've never heard of assent from submission, but
Yeah, I'm back.
I have heard assent from fear, which why
There's
they use
well,
the
every human being has pheromones.
right.
Everybody has a frequency, and it's also it manifests through the olfactory glands of the nostrils. And one of my researchers in on the continent, Otieno Wawario, he's an engineer. He uncovered the sequence of that, and it's in one of my books, I think, on the hidden it's about racial battle fatigue, and it's called the hidden signal. I've written too many damn books. So I put it in that book. I'm getting ready to bring out some new research confirming that, though.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so by default of, and also you can see this line in epigenetics and the genetic memory when we are around, or some of us are around second frequency. Sometimes it's so automatic we don't even think about it, but it's the pheromones that's behind code switching. So we automatically change when we're around them. And some of us submit, some of us retreat, but if you can't retreat, then the nervous system kicks in before it kicks into the brain. We sense danger, the body senses danger before the mind does. And it's an amazing science, but based on all of the eras of second frequency being what they are and who they are and how they've done it, this is one of the processes, and I'm just taking a deep dive into that research.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I've
Hey, Sandra.
across.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? I ran across the smell of fear, and the smell of fear is back when, in old days they used to call a person a yellow coward. You've heard that term before, right? You're high yellow, you're yellow coward, right? And that term comes from the sweat of a person when they're in fear and they give off a scent. Okay. And this scent, it comes from the liquidation of fat, because fat, when it comes out your body, is yellow. That's why your urine is yellow, is because the fat inside your body is melted. You see what I'm saying? So and you've also heard that way back in the day when we weren't that comfortable with dogs, they were like, don't fear because they can smell it, right? You've heard that before. Don't show any fear towards the dog because the dog will attack you if they smell any fear on you. Now, one thing I've talked about with a couple of my friends is the environment of the African. I mean, how could you not be in fear, bro? I mean, we have to think all the numbers that you see of animals on your National Geographic or whatever. When it comes to Africa, you really have to times that by 10,000 to really understand the old world of what was going on, because they had way more animals than what they have today. And that's also the same with America. America had a lot more animals.
Well, a lot of the animals have gone extinct, so you're absolutely right.
Right. They've had they had way more animals, but from the animals that we do know about, humongous snakes, alligators, lions in the trees, panthers, and they operate at nighttime. So for you to be hearing all of these animals consistently while you're sleeping at night, or when you're going out to get food or to get plants or whatever the case, there's going to be a large tone of fear in your system, and then you're running around naked at the same time because of the heat. So the fear that's implemented and the standoffishness from the rest of the world comes from the environment. When we're talking about the whole African picture, I mean, you're not going to throw me around no lions and no bears, and I'm not sitting here like, what? Like, like ants could take over your body and use it as a home. When we're talking about Africa, okay, we're talking about humongous wasps. You got poisonous plants everywhere. This is not a friendly system. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know how animals would respond to the scent of submission, but I do know, and we've all heard it just from American lore, that animals will attack from the scent of fear. Okay, and fear and submission comes from fear. It can, okay? There's other things that can incorporate submission, but fear is one of those things. You see what I'm saying? So I directly don't know, But when it comes to our environment biologically, we don't have a direct weapon compared to a wasp, compared to a mosquito, compared to a cobra, compared to a shark. We don't have a skill. We would have to exercise our skill in order to trap an animal, in order to develop a weapon to fight off an animal, or things of that nature. So and then if you really want to get down to the details, human babies are the most defenseless amongst all living beings on this planet. Okay. And they need our direction. If they don't have our direction, hopefully a wolf will have the sympathy and say, oh, we're going to raise him like one of us, which is documented in history. Okay. There has been situations where babies have been found amongst animals, and the animals raised the human baby as one of their own. So it's an odd picture, and there are areas of the human existence and the attachment to the animal existence that we will never be able to detail or put underneath a microscope. You see what I'm saying? So, that's just the line. But from what I see, brother, you better have your spear, you better have your shotgun out here. Okay. And that's not only for animals, that's for other humans too. Okay. So that's the way I break it down to a simplicity status, you know what I'm saying, on how we gonna move and survive, you dig? So let me get back to this. Failures have to be studied to understand one's own weakness. If you cannot face the mirror that which flattereth not, then progression will not prevail. Okay. That term right there, that phrase right there, if you cannot, facing the mirror that which flattereth not, because the mirror does not flatter, comes from a picture or a drawing from the medieval times. It is obvious that there are many forms of wars going on here. In this chapter, you will encounter another layer of magic that was embedded inside the times and the atmosphere in order to be a base for the African-American culture. This zone can be referred to as the human sacrifice nganga. Does anybody know what an nganga is? Okay, an nganga is the pot that is used for voodoo, okay, which is a necromancy art. And when I say necromancy, that means the decomposition of organic materials of different forms. That means plants, and that's also flesh. And they put it inside the pot, and then they use the poleros or the palos. The poleros are sticks that you put inside the pot where the organic material decomposes and gives the poleros a form of life. And this polero is where the installation of the god comes from, or the loa is what is called in voodoo. Okay. And this nganga practice goes all the way down to African tribes as well, as not just the voodoo. Okay. So it is a necromancy art, and that's why it's dark centered and it carries that type of energy. Okay. Even though beings of good do come through this same energy zone. Okay. But when you break down what sorcery is, the Loas really don't have an understanding of good or bad. They have a understanding of completion. So whatever needs to be done to bring us to the Z point of our desired results will be done, whether that's good or bad. Okay. So this zone can be referred to as the human sacrifice nganga that give life to the culture and amalgamated that the many experiences throughout the generations. There are many things to pay attention to and keep with you throughout while you read the rest. The atrocities that were committed, of course, are very inhumane. There is no justification for the acts. Greed was the driving force. When reading the details of the many unique situations, it makes you ponder an outside willpower greater than that greed or even human thought. Okay. Throughout all ancient civilizations, there has always been some form of connection with gold. This connection held if in high esteem, as did other stones. Why? Because it looks nice, and because it looks nice to humans. Have killed each other for it for centuries. One thing about gold. Oh, well, here it is. Gold's alchemical principles must be true, or the human agreement makes it true. Gold and land in which neither can be taken to the grave with you is all we live for. The natives didn't have a sense of ownership, and that is their right. The Spaniards who come from plague, executioners, and prostitutes everywhere developed a mentality of possession because of weather, health, or social conditions that could sporadically take everything that they knew of. Okay. Now, one thing about that is that gold is also the major conductor of electricity. Okay. So, and as we're using our computers and phones right now, there's a lot of gold in both. This was not the native's conditions. The native adorned his jewels. They had gold and food and plentiful. They also had small conflict with neighboring Indians of similar culture and language. Usually in these times and conditions, the hierarchy of tribes was held in place by a fear that was imposed by either rumor or real act. Nonetheless, fear and intimidation was the dividing line that allowed the Spaniard to invade, seek, destroy, and conquer. So, one thing about what happened with Europeans, we've already studied the conditions that they came out of, which was extreme. And as soon as they got the capability to get on a boat and go across the ocean, they're going to pillage whatever they can to make themselves a king. That is the true desire of the European, and why they left Europe is because the main thing about going to the free world or the new world was that any white male could make themselves similar to the king. And that's what we're looking at today, billionaires and trillionaires, so on and so forth. So this is what happened with the Aztec Empire. The siege of the capital of the Aztec Empire occurred in 1521 following extensive manipulation of local groups and exploitation of pre-existing divisions inside the Aztecan Empire. This allowed the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortes to conquer them using his indigenous allies. There was anywhere in between 100,000 to 240,000 killed in the war overall. This includes civilians. As many as 40,000 Aztecs' bodies were floating in the canals or awaiting burial after the siege. Almost all of the Aztec nobility were dead, and the remaining survivors were mostly young women and very young children. The Spanish allies, primarily the Tlaxcalans and Aztecans, continued to attack even after the surrender, slaughtering thousands of the remaining civilians and looting the city. The Tlaxcalans did not spare women or children. They entered houses, stealing all precious things they found, raping and killing the women, and then stabbing the children. Hernan Cortes was a native of Extremadura, home to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Due to the fact that the vast spiritual intelligence and culture of the Aztecan Empire had deceased with the people, the complex thinking and spiritual base of thought needed to be replaced. By the 1600s, the Extremadura Guadalupe had a statue of the Virgin said to be carved by St. Luke, the evangelist, was already a national icon by the 1600s. Okay, so this is the installation of Catholicism that was going on. Now, another Catholic title of the Blessed Virgin Mary name is the Virgin of Guadalupe, and it is associated with a Marian apparition and a venerated image enshrined within the minor basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. An apparition is supposedly an angelic vision of a holy person or someone deceased. The natives recognized Our Lady of Guadalupe as Tanantzin, and Aztecan mother goddess. Okay, the attributes were, these are the countries that she's correlated to. Her patronage is while she stands atop a darkened crescent moon. Standing on top of a crescent moon could be a reference to New Orleans, as its nickname is the Crescent City. The upside down crescent was a symbol of the Byzantine Empire, and the moon is also a witch reference. Each angle or phase of a crescent moon has a different definition. Being carried by a cherubic angel is in reference of cherubs in the Sable Venus picture. Our Lady of Guadalupe is also the patron to the city of San Antonio, who is named after Saint Anthony of Padua. Now, when we go in on this, one thing to also state is that the police department in New Orleans is an upside down crescent with a 5-point star in it. Okay, just to let you know. So the way the police system in America is set up is backed by orders. And there she is. That is the Black Madonna that was put in place. Okay. Let me see here. Saint Juan Diego Cuauhtlacoatzin, a native of Mexico, is the first Roman Catholic indigenous saint from the Americas. He is said to have been granted an apparition of the Virgin Mary on 4 separate occasions in December of 1531 at the hill of Tepeyac, then outside, but now well within Mexico City. This hill is where the original temple of Tonantzin was located. He spoke the original Aztecan language and became a saint exclusively off of receiving visions. His only patronage is indigenous people. The Black Legend. A Black legend is a specific form of exaggerating, lying, fabricating, and contorting facts, or adding false addendum to facts on or against people, nations, or institutions with the intent to defame in order to cloak their positive contributions to history. In shorter terms, it is a negative propaganda, usually created and implemented by an enemy in order to destroy their context in history. The Spanish Black legend is propaganda made by the English and Germans that supposedly demonized the Spaniards' character with paintings of atrocious acts that were committed during the time. So, due to the fact that the English and the Germans, England and Germany, didn't like Spain and the Spaniards, they would put in Black legends, which were propaganda lies of what was the activity that was occurring while Spain was down there destroying the people. Okay. The Black Shots. There is not a lot of information documented about the Black Shots. From what I did encounter, it seems as if they operated like a secret society of mercenaries that thrived at killing other slaves. Their orders in unison could be sporadically attained at will. It is to be noted that this group was occupied with supposedly good slaves. Because of this, it is easy for us to suspect that there was a communication line between several slave masters that probably assisted in breeding this militia in preparation for a rebellion. Do you see that? The Windward Maroons were defeated by a person who was considered a loyal slave, William Cuffey, hence coffee. He was the leader of hired soldiers called the Black Shots. He claimed a reward offered for the head of the Negro's old witch, Nanny of the Maroons, in 1733. Slave owners often rewarded the slaves for working on behalf. There is no proof of her head being collected. So what that is stating is that white slave masters already understood that there may been an uprisal. So this may be the first stage of quote unquote house niggas. And what they did is they selected certain slaves on who responded to them naturally. That's the key word. The key thing about a lot of this stuff is called nature and how you move by nature. This is why you get an application for a job. It's because you naturally came here to get a check. Okay. You naturally came here to be trained and work my company. So I can, give you a check and you can provide it to your family. And that has a lot to do with that individual named William Coffey. We'll get to that in a second. But so this was like a secret society of mercenaries that would be living amongst the slaves. And if the slaves were trying to form any uprisal, these cats would take them out. Okay. And they were called the Black Shots. All right. Boys Cayman or Bois Cayman means alligator woods. This is the name of the location where the first major ritual was conducted to bring about the Haitian Revolution. This location is in the northern part of the island. The secret voodoo ritual ceremony took place on August 14th, 1791 in the French colony of Saint-Domingue. August 14th is the day before August 15th, which is the Assumption of Mary. That's also August 15th is the birthday of Nipsey Hussle as well. Another date used for the ceremony is August 22nd. Which is the feast day of the Queen of the Earth. Okay. This ceremonial event has been referred to by many Christians as the initial situation that caricaturized Haitians as having a pact with the devil. Ironically, not including the natural response to said conditions and treatment that would make one act as if he had a pact with the devil, indirectly insinuating that the devil needed to assist in order for a revolution to occur. This theory enforces the ancestral spirits at the voodoo ceremony to be recast as demons. Okay. In their view, the engagement with Loas, that's how the Loas is spelled, L-W-A-S or L-O-A-S, amounted to a pact that put Haiti underneath the rule of Satan. Okay, so this right here, boys came in, and the ritual that he conducted was the beginning of the whole demonic nature that is supported throughout our socialism to be correlated with Haiti. Okay. So Brufu or Brefu. Brefu was enslaved at a plantation in Coral Bay on the 23rd of November in 1733 after hearing the signal of a cannon fired from Fort Frederick's tavern. Brefu entered the main house and killed both slave master and his wife, taking all the gunpowder ammunition and accompanied by fellow slaves. Brefu then proceeded to another plantation house where she killed 3 members of the family. She committed suicide to evade capture. Her body was discovered at Browns Bay with 23 other rebels who committed suicide. A plantation owner stated one of the leaders of the rebellion, Bafu, whom none of us knew and whom we assumed to be a man, having murdered my son and his wife, is a woman. Okay. Now, you already feel it. You feel the smoke, you feel the haziness, you feel the mist of confusion in this zone, because that's exactly what it is. So it's just like when you were a little kid and you watched Disney movies and they showed you ghost ships, and the ghost ships arrived out of the fog and the mist. That fog and that mist is this entire situation, everything that was going on, especially the revolutionaries, because the way the stories are compiled and told, there is no concrete proof that these situations occurred, you know, and I'm not removing it to say that they didn't occur, but there's no hard line evidence. But then also at this time, there wasn't a lot of writing, you see, because writing and the production of the the mass production of literature during that time wasn't fluid, it wasn't consistent enough, and it was also entering a psychological zone with the human of dividing exaggeration and destroying lies and shit, because the human by nature will exaggerate certain stories in order to make this, to inflate the situation, to make it look or seem powerful, as they try to gain some form of worship out of you because of their survival rate or whatever happened to you, or trying to receive sympathy out of you, or trying to encourage or inflate your emotions towards a certain scenario. And that has always been a human activity, and the written word destroyed exaggeration. Okay, and this is just beginning at these times. So some of these stories are compilations of different situations that occurred, and they just embodied it into one individual. Some of these situations may not have happened at all. Some of these situations could have been way larger than what I'm able to present to you today. But the fact is that none of us was there, and I'm going off of the material that was left over, for me to present to you what was going on, what little bits of evidence that I did get, you see? So, Kalinda. Kalinda is the national martial art of Trinidad and Tobago. It also inculcates a kind of folk music and war dance that arose in the Caribbean during the 1720s. Kalinda is the French spelling, and the Spanish equivalent is Calenda. Carnival songs are considered to be Kalinda chants. Besides its covert dancing and singing counterparts, it is a stick fighting styled martial art. It originated in the Kingdom of Congo in Africa. Capoeira. Capoeira is an Afro-Brazilian martial art that combines elements of dance, acrobatics, and music. It was developed by enslaved Africans in Brazil at the beginning of the 1500s. The most widely accepted origin of the word capoeira refers to the areas of low vegetation in the Brazilian Amazons where slaves would hide. Capoeira starts with the beginning of African slavery in Brazil. This is not to remove from the fact that the fighting practice originates from Angola and was called Ngolo, a type of ritual dance. In the 1500s, the Portuguese started bringing enslaved Africans to their colonies coming from Angola. Brazil received the majority of these enslaved Africans. Almost 40% of all enslaved Africans that came through the Atlantic Ocean ended up in South America. Cecil Fatiman. She was the mambo that oversaw the boys came in ritual. She sacrificed a Black Creole pig to Izili Dantor. She incarnated Izili Dantor during the course of this ritual. The pig may have had things done to it during its life, which compiled the energy of war. The pig being a symbol of Freya's boar is very possible. So Freya, the goddess who is the root word to Friday, one of her animals was a boar, okay, which would give further allowance for the violent activities of Europeans justified by revenge from the mythology realm. Pigs or hogs in the magic psyche realm represents insatiability, gorging, uncontrollable desire, and pilfering. They also represent unrecognizable filth, to be blind to immoral acts, sickness, and discernment, and bad hygiene. To kill the pig is a symbol of never settling for less and demanding greater. Okay. Cuffy. Cuffy was an escaped slave in Jamaica. He led other runaway slaves to form a united militia in the Hill Lands. His militia raided white slave owners during the end of the 1700s. Cuffy and his men were well armed after stealing muskets and ammunition from the Maroons. With their arms, they conducted a lot of raids on plantations in Western Jamaica. Many of the escaped slaves who joined his community had secured their freedom by fighting in the Second Maroon War. Many slave owners claimed that their suffering at the hands of Cuffy was worse than what they endured under the Second Maroon War. Armed slaves sent out against them defected and joined Cuffy's community. Some Maroons tried to subdue Cuffy's community of runaways, but failed. Many Western planters claimed that Cuffy caused a lot of their suffering. Armed slaves sent out against them retreated and joined Cuffy's community. Eventually, members of the group Blackshot killed two of the leaders of his community and captured half a dozen runaway slaves. After this, Cuffy took his people further into the country, and they were never subdued. The word Cuffy is close to the word coffee by sound and spelling. One of Jamaica's main exports is coffee. Coffee, sugar, liquor, cocaine, and booty was discovered in the islands, and its trade and usage assisted in taking over the world. These chemicals sped up the minds of people and provided a fantasy. That fantasy is the world we live in now. It is important to note that coffee from Jamaica is one of the most expensive coffees on the planet. The usage of coffee is as old as biblical times and was originally discovered in Ethiopia. The revolutionary named coffee is significant in giving the plant coffee power and life. Coffee, the plant, of course, needs no assistance, but assistance is always good. The reference to coffee causing a lot of suffering could be relative to the coffee bean that can cause much damage to the body and mind. Okay. Code Noir, which is French for the code black. Okay, let me see here. I don't even know if I should read this part right here. Yeah, okay. These are the laws that were put in place. I'm going to go ahead and speed through this, so I'm going to read it all. So just follow me now. Follow me. Okay. The Code Nord was put in place by France as the first real code of the islands that attempted to bring order during slavery. The Code Nord was implemented into law for the West Indies in 1687. It was abolished April 27th, 1848. So that's about 160 something years of running. It was encoded into law in Louisiana from 1724 to 1803. The law was recorded at the Sovereign Council of Saint Domingue in the May 6th of 1687. Okay. Louis, by the grace of God, King of France and Navarre, to all those here present and to those to come, greetings, and that we must also care for all people that divine providence has put under our tutelage. We have agreed to have the reports of the officers we have sent to our American islands studied in our presence. These reports inform us of their need for our authority and our justice in order to maintain the discipline of the Roman Catholic and Apostolic faith in the islands. Our authority is also required to settle issues dealing with the condition and quality of the slaves in said islands. We desire to settle these issues and inform them that even though they reside infinitely far from our normal abode, we are always present for them, not only through the reach of our power, but also by the promptness of our help toward their needs. For these reasons, and on the advice of our council and of our certain knowledge, absolute power, and royal authority, we have declared, ruled, and ordered, and declare that the following pleases us. Okay. Article 1. We desire and we expect that the edict of 23 April 1615 of the late king, our most honored Lord and Father, who remains glorious in our memory, be executed in our islands. This accomplished, we enjoin all of our officers to chase from our islands all the Jews who have established residence there. As with all declared enemies of Christianity, we command them to be gone within 3 months of the day of issuance of the present order, at the risk of confiscation of their persons and their goods. All slaves that shall be in our islands shall be baptized and instructed in the Roman Catholic and Apostolic faith. We enjoin the inhabitants who shall purchase newly arrived Negroes to inform the governor and intendant of said islands of this fact within no more than 8 days, or risk being fined an arbitrary amount. They shall give the necessary orders to have them instructed and baptized within a suitable amount of time. Okay. Note, we arrived in the islands with only Voodoo and other subsystems from smaller tribes. Nonetheless, the majority, this is outside of the law. This is what I'm writing. We arrived in the islands with only Voodoo and other subsystems from smaller tribes. Nonetheless, the majority of those who were kidnapped were of the Bantu tongue, as these dialects were branched out into several different tribes and regions. During the transformation into the New World, the Fons version of Voodoo engulfed all others, and gods and goddesses merged into consolidated entities. This is in the synchronicity with how Catholicism works. When the Spanish, French, Dutch, and English Protestantism was being intertwined with voodoo, the tribesmen used the caricatures of the saints as representations of the Loas. So if a French man was to see his natives worshiping St. Peter, this was fine. But in the African mind, they were looking at St. Peter, but seeing Papa Legba. Regardless, the islands and its people are educated in the Catholic way and will represent it as Voodoo is socially negative. The negative connotation is stated from the status of physical riches it attains for its practitioners. So it is practiced underneath the guise of culture and used in other forms of ceremonies such as marriages, childbirths, etc. Okay. Now, Article 3, we forbid any religion. This is back to the law that was written. We forbid any religion other than the Roman Catholic and Apostolic faith from being practiced in public, not private. We desire that offenders be punished as rebels disobedient of our orders. We forbid any gathering to that end, which we declare to be conventicle, illegal, and seditious, and subject to the same punishment as would be applicable to the masters who permit it or accept it from their slaves. Article 4. No persons assigned to positions of authority over Negroes shall be other than a member of the Roman Catholic and Apostolic faith, and the master who assigned these persons shall risk having said Negroes confiscated, and arbitrary punishment levied against the persons who accepted said position of authority. Article 5. We forbid our subjects who belong to the so-called Reformed religion from causing any trouble or unforeseen difficulties for our other subjects or even for their own slaves in the free exercise of the Roman Catholic Apostolic faith at the risk of exemplary punishment. Article 6. We enjoin all our subjects of whatever religion and social status they may be to observe Sundays and the holidays that are observed by our subjects of the Roman Catholic and Apostolic faith. We forbid them to work nor make their slaves work on said days from midnight until the following midnight. They shall neither cultivate the earth, manufacture sugar, nor perform any other work at the risk of a fine and an arbitrary punishment against the masters and of confiscation by our officers of as much sugar worked by said slaves before being caught. So not working on Sundays comes from this article, okay? Comes from these laws, Code Nor. Article 7. We forbid them also to hold slave markets or any other market on said days at the risk of similar punishments and of confiscation of merchandise that shall be discovered at the market and an arbitrary fine against the sellers. Article 8. We declare that our subjects who are not of Roman Catholic Apostolic faith are incapable of contracting a valid marriage in the future. We declare any child born from such unions to be bastards, and we desire that said marriages be held and reputed, and to hold and repute as actual concubinage. Okay. No, this is me again. As this law was in place for the span of 160 years, due to the longevity of the practice being enforced and interwoven to the origins of African American culture, we still respond and exhibit behavioral patterns that give credence to the fact our understanding of courting, copulation, conjugal unions, and opposite gender communication is based on separation and division. This is not done by a conscious decision made from a volunteered negative mentality. Even if it is, its origins, which are foreign, are found in the unconscious zone of the African American mind that was put there intentionally, as was many other habits. Understand that when ritualistic activity that is designed to alter behavior is incorporated into a subject, it will conduct itself as a machine in a self-operating format. Okay. Article, hold on, let me see how many articles we got here, because I know y'all want to hear revolutionaries. Let me see here. This one's important. Article 12. Children born from marriages between slaves shall be slaves, and if the husband and wife have different masters, they shall belong to the masters of the female slave, not to the master of the husband. So that's enforcing the female rule like we see today. This obviously denotes the masculine essence of the male to have power over either mother or child. This embedded sense makes the male feel unattached and not responsible for the family that never was. Okay. Okay. Let me see. Article 15. We forbid slaves from carrying any offensive weapons or large sticks at the risk of being whipped and having the weapons confiscated. The weapons shall then belong to he who confiscated them. The sole exception shall be made for those who have been sent by their masters to hunt and who are carrying either a letter from their masters or his known mark, which they're referring to branding. Okay. Let's do this one because this is business related. Article 18 we have here. We forbid slaves from selling sugarcane for whatever reason or occasion, even with the permission of their master, at the risk of a whipping for the slaves and a fine of 10 pounds for the masters who gave them permission, and an equal fine for the buyer. Article 19. We also forbid slaves from selling any type of commodities, even fruit, vegetables, firewood, herbs for cooking, and animals, either at market or at individual houses without a letter or a known mark from their masters granting express permission. Slaves shall risk the confiscation of goods sold in this way without their masters receiving restitution for the loss, and a fine of £6 shall be levied against the buyers. Okay. So, Article 27, it says here. Slaves who are infirm due to age, sickness, or other reason, whether the sickness is curable or not, shall be nourished and cared for by their masters. In the case that they be abandoned, said slaves shall be awarded to the hospital, to which their master shall be required to pay 6 souls per day for the care and feeding of each slave. So we see that during that time, money was referred to as souls. Okay. Let's see here. Here we go. Article 33. The slave who has struck his master in the face or has drawn blood or has similarly struck the wife of his master, his mistress, or their children shall be punished by death. Article 38. The fugitive slave who has been on the run for 1 month from the day his master reported him to the police shall have his ears cut off and shall be branded with a fleur-de-lis. The fleur-de-lis is the symbol that you see for the New Orleans Saints, which is a symbol that you will find in all ancient civilizations, ironically. Okay. Shall have his ears cut off and shall be branded with a fleur-de-lis on one shoulder. If he commits the same infraction for another month, again counting from day he is reported, he shall have his hamstring cut and be branded with a fleur-de-lis on the other shoulder. The third time he shall be put to death. Okay. Let me see here. There's the fleur-de-lis right there. Let's see here. We enjoin Article, I forgot what an L is in Roman numerology, but here we go. Roman numerals. We enjoin our officers to criminally prosecute the masters or their foremen who have killed a slave under their auspices or control, and to punish the master according to the circumstances of the atrocity. In the case where there is absolution, we allow our officers to return the absolved master or foreman without them needing or our pardon. Okay. So that means basically you can just kill your slaves. There's a little sovereign language here. We declare slaves to be charges and as such enter into community property. They are not to be mortgaged. The word mortgaged means death pledge. Okay. So when they put a mortgage for your home, it's a death pledge that you're supposed to die in that home. That's why it's 30, 40 years on the mortgage. Okay. So, and shall be shared equally between the co-inheritors without benefit to the wife or one particular inheritor, nor subject to the right or primogeniture, the usual customs, duties, feudal or lineage charges, or feudal or seigneurial taxes. They shall not be affected by the details of decrees, nor from the imposition of the 4/5 in case of disposal by death of bequeathing. Okay. So husband, wife, and prepubescent children, if they are all under the same master, may not be taken and sold separately. We declare the seizing and sales that shall be done as such to be void. For sales who have been separated, we desire that the seller shall risk their loss, and that the slaves he kept shall be awarded to the buyer without him having to pay any supplement. So understand that this is French law. This is a little bit different than what America imposed, okay? All right. So here we go. So yeah, that is the law that was imposed by the French. It's called Code Noir. If you want to go look it up, I suggest you do, because I know you all want to hear about the revolutionaries, and that's what we're going to stick on today. But I did want to go over the law to let you know that there was law imposed on how the activities were being, supervised in the islands during this time. Sirhan Sloane. In 1688, he made this statement after a tour of the islands. Slaves were punished for major crimes by nailing them down on the ground with crooked sticks on every limb, and then applying the fire by degrees from the feet and the hands, burning them gradually up to the head, whereby their pains are extravagant. For crimes of a lesser nature, gelding or chipping off half of the foot with an axe. Their punishments are suffered by them with great constancy. For running away, they put iron rings of great weight on their ankles or necks riveted to them, or a spur in the mouth. They are whipped till they are raw. Some put on their skins pepper and salt to make them smart. You see that terminology? To make them smart. To be smart is to receive pain. Okay. You only get smart about a situation after you have been beat for it. Okay. At other times, their masters will drop melted wax on their skins and use several very exquisite torments. These punishments are sometimes merited by the blacks, who are a very perverse generation of people, and though they appear harsh, yet are scarce equal to some of their crimes and inferior to what punishments other European nations inflict on their slaves in the East Indies. Okay. Nicholas Owen, who is considered to be a factor, in his book, Journal of a Slave Dealer, he states, he spent most of his time trying to keep the land crabs from destroying his little garden of watermelons, guinea peas, and pumpkins, which were the only things he could eat without falling victim to dysentery. He despised the natives. These people are very lazy, seldom providing anything but just what necessary for the present, and quarreled constantly with the chiefs over the amount of their dash. One complaining, I gave him no dram. Another says he wants some tobacco, and a third is hungry. He was terrified of the witch doctors who performed some simple sleight of hand tricks for him. These must be alleged of the power of some evil spirit sent by that great enemy of mankind to draw these ignorant wretches to himself, and fearful of the terrible creatures that lived in the jungle. One monster has body, arms, and head like a man in all things, but is covered over with strong hair and exceeds 2 common men in size. But above all, he suffered from his homesickness. Okay. Francis Moore, who is a Royal African Company factor. Whenever the king of Barcelona wants goods or brandy, he sends a messenger to our governor. Accordingly, against the arrival of said sloop, where there with a cargo. This news being not at all unwelcome, the governor sends accordingly. Against the arrival of said sloop, the king plunders some of his enemy towns, seizing the people and selling them for such commodities as he is in want of, which commonly is brandy or rum, gunpowder, ball, guns, pistols, and cutlasses. Okay. In case he is not at war with the neighboring king, he falls on one of his own towns, which are numerous, and uses them in the very same manner. It is owing to that insatiable thirst of his after brandy that his subjects' freedom and families are in so precarious a situation. He often goes out with some of his troops by a town in the daytime and returns in the night and sets fire to 3 parts of it, placing guards at the fourth to seize the people that run out of the fire, then ties their arms behind and sells them. So he burns down his own town in the middle of the night to make the people run out, and then sells the people as slaves. When they run out of the fire, they clock them upside the head. Okay. He also stated that in some years, slaves to the amount of 2,000, most of whom they say are prisoners taken in war, they buy them from the different princes who take them. Their way of bringing them is tying them by the neck with leather thongs at about a yard distance from each other, 30 or 40 in a string, having generally a bundle of corn or an elephant's tooth upon each of their heads. An elephant's tooth is a tusk. I cannot be certain of the number of merchants who follow this trade, but there may perhaps be about 100 who go up into the inland country with the goods which they buy from the white men, and with them purchasing in various countries gold, slaves, and elephant's teeth, ivory. Okay. Jamestown, 1768, testified that the slavers used different weights to which they gave the same appearance by casting a stone and a piece of lead alike in brass. I had such weights myself and used them in dealing for wax teeth, etc., by order of my commanding officer, whom I repeatedly saw do it himself. Such tricks were so common that when a native was accused cheating, he sometimes answered indignantly, "What do you think I am, a white man?" The slavers, for their part, claimed that native dealers could never be trusted and that they were not above drugging a sickly slave so he would pass inspection. Often a fine-looking Negro, seemingly the best in the whole coffle, would drop dead a few hours after being purchased. So they had tricks to make sick slaves look healthy so they could sell them. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy details that we just went over that you haven't heard before. And this, like I stated, this is the Breaking Islands. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah. Okay. There was another form of torture that went down. Yeah, it's called Derby's dose. Got it. So Derby's dose was a form of torture used in Jamaica to punish slaves who attempted to escape or committed other offenses like stealing food on plantations that were owned or ran by Thomas Thistlewood. According to Malcolm Gladwell in his 2008 book Outliers, Thomas Thistlewood wrote about his outlandish behavior and disturbing treatment of Jamaican slaves extensively in his 14,000-page diary. The runaway would be beaten and salt pickled. Lime juice and bird pepper would be rubbed into his or her open wounds. Another slave would defecate into the mouth of the miscreant, and who would then be gagged with their mouth full for 4 to 5 hours. The punishment was invented by Thomas Thistlewood, a slave overseer, and named after the slave Derby, who was made to undergo this punishment when he was caught eating young sugar canes stalks in the field on the 25th of May in 1756. However, historian Douglas Hall points out that Derby's dose was so called because it was often administered by one of his slaves called Derby. Okay. So yeah, I know you never heard of one of those, but yeah, that was another situation that was going on. So Duddy Boukman, this name is also translated as Bookman. He was considered to be a Hongan, which is a voodoo priest. He initiated the Haitian Revolution with a voodoo ceremony with Cecil Fattyman on August 22nd, 1791. The blacks of the North entered into a rebellion. They killed all the whites they met and set the plantations on fire. The French quickly captured Boukman and beheaded him. This brought the rebellion under control. It is said that he was a cruel slave overseer before starting the revolution. The name Bokman is a Christian and is of French Flanders origin. Okay, so Flanders, where'd you hear that name at? The Simpsons, right? Flanders, right? You heard that in the cartoon The Simpsons. Throw away the image of the God of the whites who has so often brought down our tears and listen to the liberty which speak in all our hearts. Bookman Duddy. Okay. Enrique. And Enriquillo is the nephew of Queen Anacawana. He was a Taino chief. Taino Indians were Tainos and the Arawak Indians was the major name of the Indian tribes in this region, okay, that went to war with the Spaniards from 1519 to 1533. He is widely celebrated throughout the Dominican Republic and is hailed as one of the top revolutionaries of the old world. Faustin Eli Soleke. You see that date again, the 15th of August, right? Soleke was a politician and military commander who served as the president of Haiti from 1847 to 1849, and emperor of Haiti from 1849 to 1859. There are no official records of government meetings during his reign. The dominance of white and mulatto leaders of the Dominican Republic were taken as a threat to him and other Haitians. He valued voodoo more than Roman Catholicism, which stigmatized him with a violent reputation. Faustin allowed Mambos and Bacors to live at his home in Haiti. He was a general in the Haitian army when he was appointed president of Haiti. Okay. Once he was in office, he installed Black loyalists in administrative positions and the nobility. His next order of business was to create a secret police and a personal army. He then gave voodoo a semi-official status, which was openly practiced in Port-au-Prince. Solike declared the Second Haitian Empire in 1849 after being proclaimed emperor under the name Faustin I and formally crowned in 1852. Several unsuccessful attempts to reconquer the Dominican Republic eroded his support. His reign ceased to exist after he folded under pressure in 1859 from General Fabre Geffrard and the Dominican military. Solike was exiled to Jamaica before returning to Haiti, where he died in 1867. Here is his crown. Okay. The gold crown encrusted with diamonds and ruby that Faustin Solike used as part of his garments. The original Faust. So you have to understand what a Faust is, because like I stated, some of these stories may be real. Some of these stories may not be real. More due diligence needs to be done, okay, on this whole time period and all the activities, okay? The original Faust. Faust is a German legend based on a supposed real person named Johann Faustus. He was a traveling magician that the church claimed to be in league with the devil. Over time, he evolved into an entity from the medieval times that sold his soul to the devil, Mephistopheles, for 24 years of unlimited knowledge, power, and riches. Mephistopheles granted Faustus wishes. Mephistopheles is only second in rank to Lucifer, pertaining to the Goetia. It is common in European witchcraft for a certain amount of time to be allotted in the pact of the exchange between the soul and the devil's arts. Faust is the metaphysical doorway to the essence energy of the relationship and or contract between humans and the devil. All relationships with the devil are done through pact. This energy or story is stereotypically applied to the man that seeks unlimited knowledge, power, and success while giving up his moral integrity in exchange. The Haitian Faustin represents the same energy, especially because he was the only ruler that wore a crown and enforced the practice of voodoo. This energy is most likely the strongest element that enforced the stereotype and caricature of the devil onto and into Haiti. Understand that Mephistopheles and Faust is extremely a European element. This is not to remove the possibility of tribes having a concept of selling the soul of their own in their tribe, which that is there. Okay. Selling the soul to the devil is a concept that encompasses the whole planet, like many cultures has that as part of their lore. So Papa Doc, Francois Dubelier, okay, and understand all of this is in alphabetical order. So time periods change because I kept it in alphabetical order when I did it. Papa Doc was the president of Haiti from 1957 to 1971. He was elected president in 1957 on a Black nationalist platform. After he dodged a military takeover in 1958, his regime rapidly became authoritarian and formed into a type of dictatorship. An undercover government death squad called the Tonton Macoute killed opponents indiscriminately. He supposedly was so revered that Haitians became highly fearful of expressing dissent, even in private. I have been told directly from Haitians that during his regime, everybody was fed and happy. Papa Doc deliberately modeled his image and was most likely the incarnation of Baron Samedi. He also incorporated elements of Haitian mythology to assist in his rule. He died in April 1971 from heart disease and diabetes. His 19-year-old son, Jean-Claude Duvalier, nicknamed Baby Doc, succeeded him as president. Gaspar Yanga. Gaspar was an African that was a leader of a maroon colony of slaves in Veracruz, Mexico. During the early period of Spanish rule, he successfully resisted a Spanish attack on his people in 1609. The Maroons continuously raided the Spanish establishments. In 1618, Yanga achieved an agreement with the colonial government for self-rule of the Maroon settlement. Guillaume Fabre Nicolas Gaffard. Guillaume was a Catholic mulatto, which would make him be against Voodoo. He was the general in the Haitian army and president of Haiti in 1859 until 1867. He connived to overthrow Faustin Soulouque from his presidency. He wanted to restore Haiti back to the official control of the colored elite. He gave orders to demolish altars, drums, and any other instruments used in ceremonies. In 1863, a 6-year-old girl was allegedly killed by voodoo practitioners in a gruesome fashion. This ritual supposedly included cannibalism. This mythical cannibal case was used as justification to outlaw voodoo. In 1867, Gaffard's bodyguards betrayed him and tried to assassinate him inside the National Palace. In March 1867, Gaffard and his family disguised themselves and fled to Jamaica, where he died in 1878. Hatui. In 1510, Hatui started an insurrection. Bartolome de las Casas later attributed the following speech to Hatui. He showed the Taino of Caobana a basket of gold and jewels, saying, "Here is the God the Spaniards worship. For these they fight and kill. For these they persecute us, and that is why we have to overthrow them into the sea. They tell us, these tyrants, that they adore a God of peace and equality, and yet they usurp our land and make us their slaves. They speak to us of an immortal soul and of their eternal rewards and punishments, and yet they rob our belongings, seduce our women, violate our daughters, incapable of matching us in valor. These cowards cover themselves with iron that our weapons cannot break." Before he was burned at the stake in 1512, a priest asked Hatui if he would accept Jesus and go to heaven. Las Casas recalled the reaction of the chief. Hatui, thinking a little, asked the religious man if Spaniards went to heaven. The religious man answered yes. The chief then said, without further thought, that he did not want to go there, but to hell, so as not to be where they were and where he would not see such cruel people. This is the name and honor that God and our faith have earned. John Baptiste Point du Sable. John Baptiste Point du Sable is regarded as the first permanent non-indigenous settler of the region that later became known as Chicago, Illinois. He is supposedly of Haitian descent.
It's pronounced DuSable, my brother.
DuSable. In the 1770s, he migrated to the Great Lakes area of North America with his Potawatomi wife named Kittihawa. In English, that's Catherine. They settled on the shore of Lake Michigan at the mouth of the Chicago River. He established an elaborate and fruitful trading market in what later became the city of Chicago. Point du Sable 1780s establishment is recognized as the first settlement that continued on and ultimately grew to become the city of Chicago. He is therefore widely regarded as the first permanent resident of Chicago and has been given the appellation founder of Chicago. So a lot of that energy that came from Haiti is there in Chicago, and that could be the root of why there's so much black on black murder going on in that region. Okay. Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Okay, Jean-Jacques Dessalines was a leader of the Haitian Revolution under the 1805 Constitution. He is the first ruler of an independent Haiti. Under Dessalines, Haiti became the first country in the Americas to permanently abolish slavery. Initially regarded as a governor general, Dessalines was later named Emperor Jacques I of Haiti from 1804 to 1806 by the generals of the Haitian Revolution Army. He is regarded as one of the founding fathers of Haiti. He ordered the 1804 Haitian massacre of French settlers in Haiti. This massacre resulted in the deaths of anywhere in between 3,000 and 5,000 people. He did allow Polish Haitians to stay in the country. Eventually, he was assassinated in 1806. The rebellion was the first action of what would become the Haitian Revolution. Jean-Pierre Boyer. Boyer was one of the leaders of the Haitian Revolution. He was also the president of Haiti from 1818 to 1843. He reunited the north and south of Haiti in 1820, and also he also disassociated the nation from Santo Domingo, which was also called the Spanish Haiti at that time. The term Spanish Haiti alludes to evidence of the conflict having its origins with Spain and France, and not necessarily the black children they birthed that now fuel that fire. This move brought all of Hispaniola under one Haitian government by 1822. Boyer managed to rule for the longest period of time of any of the revolutionary leaders of his generation. Boyer believed Haiti had to be acknowledged as an independent nation and that this could be established only by cutting a deal with France. On the 11th of July in 1825, Boyer signed an indemnity treaty stipulating that Haiti would pay France a certain amount of money to compensate for the lost property and slaves and trade in exchange for formal diplomatic recognition of its independence. Boyer fled Haiti to nearby Jamaica. He eventually settled in exile in France, where he died in Paris in 1850. Jose Antonio Aponte. Jose, also known as Black Jose, died on April 9th, 1812 in Havana, Cuba. He was a Cuban political activist and military officer of the Uru religion. He has been inculcated into history as the individual responsible for the most proficient slave rebellions in Cuba, called the Aponte Conspiracy of 1812. He held the rank of first corporal in Havana's Black militia. He had a goal to free the slaves, uplift free people of color, and overthrow slavery in Cuba. The revolution struck several sugar plantations on the outskirts of Havana and was soon crushed by the government. He was eventually caught and hanged on the gallows and then decapitated. His head was placed in an iron cage and showcased in front of the house where he lived, and his hand went on display on another street. In 1871, 5 decades after Mexican independence, Yanga was designated as a national hero of Mexico. Maroons. The Maroons are the name of the people who revolted against their slave masters in the islands. They are the descendants of West Africans. The majority of the different tribes that were mixed up while being brought to America are mainly people from the Akan Asante people of what is today Ghana. They were called Korofter when they were brought to Jamaica. Many slaves escaped the oppressive conditions of the plantations and built their own communities in the Blue Mountains of the island and joined the Maroons. The Blue Mountains in the occult world is a mystical location of working dwarves. Okay. Due to Jamaica being the most popularized state amongst American culture, it transfers this hidden dwarf energy to Blacks of America. When these slaves arrived in the mountains, they usually intermarried with the native islanders, the Arawaks. The Maroons were also known for raiding and burning down plantations for weapons, food, and allowing the now freed slaves to join their militia. The Maroons of Jamaica used the horns from cattle to communicate over great distances in ways that couldn't be understood by people outside the community. It is obvious from the information that I've encountered, the Maroons operated more like mercenaries, meaning they stood on no one side, had separate communities, and chose the battles that they wanted to partake in. They were soldiers for hire. There are situations where they assisted other slaves in revolts, and there are also situations where they were used as a special platoon in an army flank representing whoever paid the most. Okay, this is the Queen Nanny of the Maroons. Queen Nanny was declared a national hero of Jamaica by the government in 1976. Her portrait graces the $500 Jamaican dollar bill, which is colloquially referred to as a nanny. Now, isn't that funny on how they've been playing with us with the whole putting Harriet Tubman on a quarter or on the dollar bill? They've been playing with us here in America, but they've had Queen Nanny because we haven't had any real so-called revolutions here in America, but they put Queen Nanny on the $500 bill in Jamaica. Okay. So, and Queen Nanny herself could be a compilation of many different females and small little battles and revolts that occurred, and they compiled the information from these different women and then composed a nanny that embodied the whole situation. Do you see? So you're looking at a lot of historical alchemy is what I call it when it comes to what was going on in the Breaking Islands. Nanny of the Maroons. She was born into the Asante people who live in Ghana. She escaped from slavery after being transported to Jamaica. History refers to her as the Maroons' old Obeah woman. Nanny, which Obeah is a magic system that is explained in this book, okay? But we skipped over that section. Nanny was highly successful at organizing plans to free slaves during a period of 30 years. She was credited with freeing more than 1,000 slaves and helping them to resettle in the Maroon community. Some claim she died an old lady and a peaceful death. There is no official death date for her. In the Journal of the Assembly of Jamaica in 1733 is a citation for resolution, bravery, and fidelity awarded to loyal slaves under the command of Captain Sambo, namely William Cuffy, who was rewarded for having fought the Maroons in the First Maroon War and who is called a very good party Negro. Having killed Nanny, the rebels' old Obeah woman, these hired soldiers were known as the Black Shots. So William Cuffy, who was called a very good party Negro, killed the Nanny of the Maroons. So the party Negro kills the revolutionary Black woman. Yeah, let that settle. Because all of you just flashed in your brains on how you've seen that, right? That is the spirituality of what's going on in America. The party Negro kills the revolutionary Black woman, right? So a revolutionary Black woman directly from Africa gets killed by a traitor who is documented as being a very good party Negro. The term party during those times was most likely used in the context of some form of political group. It is still being used in this form today. On another level of existence, this term is related to what the indigenous people are addicted to. Its other definition, a good time, dancing, singing, and getting intoxicated. Okay. And that's also part of the reason why they have feast days, the saints. They have about 10 to 20 different saints on every day of the year, because every day of the year is considered a feast day, because overall, regardless of tribe, regardless of time period, regardless of race, regardless of location, we want to party. That is one thing that is consistent through all humans, is partying, dancing, and drinking. Okay. The double context of the word is fitting for the futuristic application that was implemented through the event. Today, the very good partying Negro destroys many Black women. This is done in many different forms. Black women may have more rage in them towards the events in history, more so than the men, because they survived excruciating rapes and were denied by both white and Black men afterwards. There is no information provided on how William Cuffey got the nickname Captain Sambo. The Mayans. Mayan warriors fought with flint-tipped spears, bows, and arrows, stones, and wooden swords with inset obsidian blades, and wore padded cotton armor to protect themselves. The Maya had never been unified as a single empire. By the time the Spanish arrived, Mayan civilization was thousands of years old and had already seen the rise and fall of great cities. There were many uprisings and rebellions between 1502 and 1696. In essence, once again, because of internal conflict, they couldn't see their external and were conquered. Common ground is the only ground to stand on. So, and another thing is in their mythology, they were the white human beings were written down as gods. Okay. Just had to throw that in there. Now, Médéric Louis Elie Moreau de Saint Mary. You want to know who this dude is? You have to look up the movie Maru's The Island of Maru, which is Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando.
It's called the Island of Moreau.
Yeah, yes. The Island of Moreau, right? Moreau, yeah. So Moreau may have been a mulatto that was educated in France. He produced in-depth studies of the colonies only years before Saint Dominguez's revolution. He owned Black people and was known for working them very hard. He was also a Freemason. He spent a lot of time traveling in the Caribbean and returning to France to write and lobby. His most famous work is titled The Description Topographique, Physique, Civile, Politique et Historique de la Partie Francaise de la Saint-Domingue. That is the name of the book that has all the different descriptions of the human engineering projects and their results, which were all the terms Sambo and colored and mulatto, quildrone, quadroon, and all that comes from. This book was written in 1789 and has yet to be translated into English, most likely for several reasons. Okay. So like I've stated, a lot of the information relative to the details that occurred during these times are written in old dialects and have yet to be translated. His book categorizes races in a hierarchical structure. He documented a possible 128 combinations of Black-white intermarriage into 9 categories. He rejected the principle of the natural rights of man in order to defend legal slavery and segregation. In his roles in the French Parliament and on the colonial governing boards, he sought to maintain an economic system based on slave labor. To this end, he pursued the rights of colonists, mostly white planters, and sought a degree of self-determination for the French Caribbean. A mockery of his book and him were made in the movie Dr. Moreau, starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, as I stated earlier. Padre Jean. Padre was a slave on the island of Hispaniola in 1676. He tried to overthrow his slave master and form a revolution. This revolt has been mentioned to have been the spark that led to the eventual Haitian Revolution. I don't necessarily agree, as there were many other revolts between 1676 and 1791. He freed slaves and fled to Tortuga Island. He lived there until 1679, when his location was discovered. After this, the French sent in some Maroons who killed him. Sambo. In the United States, the word Sambo is thought to refer to the racial cross between an enslaved African and a white person. That's its original definition. It is a derogatory term used for a person with African descent. In older times, it signified a person that has a mixture of Black and white ancestry, usually more Black than white. During the times, there were many different classifications of race distinction, was labeled and defined due to intermarriages and interracial liaisons. Some of these titles are mulatto, quadroon, octoroon, etc. In modern U.S. English and British English, Webster's Third International Dictionary holds that it may have come from the Congo word Nzambu, which means monkey. The Royal Spanish Academy gives the origin from a Latin word, possibly the adjective vulgus, or another modern Spanish term, patizambo, both of which translate to bow-legged. Now, you also have the word zombie, which is close to it, and zombie comes from the word Zambia, okay, which is a country in Africa, okay? So Sambo's grave is the burial site of a dark-skinned slave on unholy ground in a field near the small village of Sunderland Point, near Heysham and Overton, Lancashire, northwest England. Sunderland Point was a port serving cotton, sugar, and slave ships from the West Indies in North America, which declined in 1787. Sambo arrived in 1736 from the West Indies. He was a servant to the captain of an unnamed ship. The Sambo Battery works a little different. William Cuffey was a resident of London, England. He was involved in political parties there. His name in history relative to the Caribbean is remembered as Captain Sambo. Sambo, the child, arrived in England as a servant and is noted to be dark-skinned. When we look at the chronology of events, we see that Sambo, the child, left the West Indies in 1736 after the First Maroon War in 1734. Supposedly, Captain Sambo collected Nanny's head in 1733. This means the events that occurred were a part of Little Sambo's world. Okay, the energy of a very good partying Negro killing a revered revolutionary Black woman was embedded in the child. Lancaster, as it was called at that time, is mentioned to have been the first place to receive cotton from the West Indies. There is also a tree in the same location as Sambo's grave that is said to have grown from a seed that came from the West Indies. The locals call the tree the cotton tree. This tree and all of its visitors keeps Sambo alive. Cotton grows on plants, not trees. The child arrived on a cotton cargo underneath the status of servant to Europeans. This is where the stereotype of cotton and the usage of the word Sambo came from and has continued with us until this day. You see that? And you can see it because Arabella has 2005 written on that rock. So that means they've been maintaining this grave for 300 something odd years just to keep the energy alive. And then there's a plaque written right there. So we're going to go over the plaque right here too. This grave has been dedicated to the innocent. Because of this, it is also attracts the innocent. This grave is a tourist site and has many local children that dedicate flowers and rocks to it, which provides the life-love principle. The life that is dedicated to it keeps the stereotype alive and embedded in European culture. Hence, it is buried in Europe. Since this vice is embedded into the motherboard of European culture, it will operate wherever Europeans establish themselves, as it is part of their thinking structure. There is a Masonic style poem written on the grave. The stone covering of the grave signifies he was a slave, as that's how burials of slaves in England occurred during those times. This stone covering could come from the witchcraft thought of not allowing a necromancer or the undead to re-arise out of the grave with the inclination of revenge. It's a guilt trip. Nonetheless, nobody knows if someone's in the grave or not. Here lies poor Sambo, a faithful Negro who, attending his master from the West Indies, died on his arrival at Sunderland. For 60 years, the angry winter's wave has thundering dashed this bleak and barren shore. Since Sambo's head laid in this lonely grave lies still and never will hear their turmoil more. Full many a sandbird chirps upon the sod, and many a moonlight elfin round him trips. Full many a summer sunbeam warms the clod, and many a teeming cloud upon him drips. But still he sleep to the awakening sounds of the archangel's trump new life impart. Then the great judge his approbation founds, not on man's color, but his worth of heart. The great judge, the book of Judges, is the 7th book in the Bible, and that is Gad's book, who is the 7th son of Israel. Samuel Sharp. was an enslaved Jamaican man who was the leader of the widespread 1832 Baptist War slave rebellion, also known as the Christmas Rebellion in Jamaica. It was supposed to be a peaceful protest, but it escalated into Jamaica's largest slave rebellion. The turmoil went on for 10 days and spread throughout the entire island. The colonial government used the armed Jamaican military forces and warriors from the towns of the Jamaican Maroons to put down the rebellion. 14 whites were killed by armed slave battalions, and more than 200 slaves were killed by troops. Afterwards, more reprisals followed. The government tried, convicted, and lynched Sharp and many other ringleaders in 1832. A total of 310 to 340 slaves were executed in the end. Tacky's War. Tacky's War was an uprising of Akan, also known as Caramante slaves, that occurred in Jamaica in 1760. It was the most significant slave rebellion in the Caribbean between 1733 slave insurrection on St. John and the 1791 Haitian Revolution. Tacky and his followers began the revolt and easily took over the frontier and Trinity plantations while killing their masters. Bolstered by their easy success, they made their way to the storeroom at Fort Haldane for ammunition to defend the town of Port Maria. After killing the storekeeper, Tacky and his men stole 4 barrels of gunpowder and 40 arms were shot before marching on to overrun the plantations at Haywood Hall and Esher. It was months later until order was reinforced. The over 60 white people and 400 or so black slaves and 2 ringleaders were burned alive. 2 others who were hung in iron cages at the Kingston Parade until they starved to death. Tituba is the name of the Arawak woman that was blamed for teaching Europeans magic in the solemn witch trial of Massachusetts. She is originally from Barbados. She was brought to America as a slave in the 1600s. Tituba was owned by Samuel Parris. You see all of these names, you see these words and how they plan? The Tituba was owned by Samuel Parris. Paris is France, okay? She was the first person accused and charged of practicing witchcraft in 1692 during the solemn witch trials. During the course of the trial, there was no empirical evidence provided of any form of witchcraft being done. There is no record of what happened to her after her bail was paid. Her father taught her the Obeah system, which is also known as the science of the Maroons. Toussaint L'Ouverture was born with the name Francois Dominique Toussaint. He was made a free slave in 1776 when America was established at the age of 33 degree Mason. He led the slave revolt that led to the independence of Haiti. Toussaint L'Ouverture began his military career as a leader of the 1791 slave rebellion in Saint Domingue. He supported slavery in the Constitution he represented. Dessalines was part responsible for his final arrest. After a tumultuous career and much complication over constitutions, he died in jail in 1803. Okay, Tupac Halpa. Tupac Halpa died in 1533. He was the first Inca emperor installed by the Spanish conquistadors during the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire led by Francisco Pizarro. Tupac Amaru, 1545 to 1572. The word Tupac means royal or shining, and Amaru means serpent. Tupac Amaru was the last Sapa Inca indigenous monarch of the Neo-Inca state. He was executed by the Spanish following a months-long pursuit after the fall of the last stronghold of the Neo-Inca state. Tupac Amaru mounted the scaffold accompanied by the Bishop of Cuzco. As he did, there was many witnesses that stated that a multitude of Indians saw the event that their lord and Inca was to die. They deafened the skies, making them reverberate with their cries and wailing. The Sampa Inca raised his hand to silence the crowds, and his last words were, Pachacamac, witness how my enemies shed my blood. The metaphysics here is clear on the scaffold, which designates a public execution on a stage. The wailing is also significant to the energy of sorrow, and also the admiration he was embodied with was going to be unjustly rendered to his enemies and the atmosphere. To peacefully accept the defeat and give credence to his God shows his vulnerability as a willing sacrifice to his God. These are the same phases that Tupac Amaru Shakur went through that led to his assassination. Another metaphysic that inculcated the original Tupac Amaru, the Incan warrior, into Tupac Amaru, our modern day iconic rapper, is the fact that the iconic rapper was born with the name Lassane Parish Crooks in 1971, and it was changed to Tupac Amaru Shakur in 1972. Did you know that? Okay. Now I'm going to go over two more Tupacs, and then we're going to close it out. The Tupac Amaru Rebellion was an Incan revival movement that sought to improve the rights of indigenous Peruvians suffering under the Spanish Bourbon reforms. The rebellion was one of many indigenous Peruvian uprisings in the latter half of the 18th century. It began with the capture and killing of the Tinta corregidor and Governor Antonio de Arriaga on November 4th, 1780. Amaru II continued his insurrection. Releasing his first proclamation, Tupac Amaru II announced that there have been repeated outcries directed to me by the indigenous peoples of this and surrounding provinces, outcries against the abuses committed by European-born crown officials, justified outcries that have produced no remedy from the royal courts to all the inhabitants of the Spanish provinces. He continues stating, I have acted only against the mentioned abuses and to preserve the peace and well-being of Indians, mestizos, mambos, as well as native-born whites and blacks. I must now prepare for the consequences of these actions. Tupac Amaru II then went on to quickly assemble an army of 6,000 natives who had abandoned their work to join the revolt. As they marched towards Cuzco, the rebels occupied the provinces of Quispicanchis, Tinta, Catabambas, Colca, and Chumbivilcas. Okay. And in fact, Tupac Amaru II's wife, Michaela Bastidas, commanded a battalion of insurgents and was responsible for the uprising in the region. She is also often credited to being more daring and a superior strategist compared to Tupac Amaru II. It is told that she scolded her husband for his cowardice. He refused to set up a surprise attack against the Spaniards in Cuzco to catch the inferior city off guard. Tupac Amaru II didn't listen to his wife. He ended up losing a lot of precious time. His strategy was to encircle the country. His goal was to gain native soldiers for his army. The Spaniards had already brought in additional soldiers and were able to control and stop the uprising before he attacked the city. This led to Tupac Amaru II, Michaela Bastidas, and several others to be captured while the rebels scattered. Amaru II was sentenced to be executed. He was forced to bear witness to the execution of his wife, Michaela Bastidas, his eldest son, Hippolito, his uncle, Francisco, Tupac Amaru, his brother-in-law, Antonio Bastidas, and some of his captains before his own death. The following is a section from the official judicial death issued by the Spanish authorities, which condemns Tupac Amaru II to torture and death. It was ordered and sentenced that Tupac Amaru II be condemned to have his tongue cut out after watching the executions of his family and to have his hands and feet tied to 4 horses who will then be driven at once toward the 4 corners of the plaza. Pulling the arms and legs from his body, the torso will then be taken to the hill overlooking the city, where it will be burned in a bonfire. Tupac Amaru's head will be sent to Tinta to be displayed for 3 days in the place of public execution, and then placed upon a pike at the principal entrance to the city. One of his arms will be sent to Tungasuka, where he was the cacique, and the other arm to the capital province of Carabaya, to be similarly displayed in those locations. His legs will be sent to Levitica and Santa Rosas in the provinces of Chumbivilcas and Lampa, respectively. This is written by Sarah C. Chambers of the Latin American Independence and Anthology of Sources. All right. After the failed dismemberment by the four horses, his body was quartered, and he was then beheaded on the main plaza in Cuzco, in the same place his apparent great-great-great-grandfather Tupac Amaru I had been beheaded. All right. There we go. Let me see here. So any questions? As there's more revolutionaries that you see is on the screen, but we're not going to go over the rest of those. What we got? After all that, I need some coffee. That was a lot of reading. Come on, Miss Murphy. Come on. I need to hear something. Miss Hinton, let's do it.
Wow. It's just too much. It's just so much to take in. And I was trying to read the book, but it was just too much to read. I guess I'm lightweight on these horrible stories, and it's just really hard to deal with. I mean, I knew a lot about something about this already, but not in such detail. And I find I can't really handle it that well. So many times I was getting ready to get up and turn this off. Seriously, it was just that difficult for me.
Turn the show
yes,
off?
turn the lesson
How
off
dare
because
you?
I was upset.
No,
it was just too
no,
I
we will
didn't
not.
turn.
No,
I'm still here.
no,
I made it through.
Exactly. That's the point. Okay, you better go
It's
buy
very
you a
difficult.
sword and swing it around in the mirror or something.
That's
you know?
right. I'm seriously militant. I get real upset. I be wanting to take everybody out, and I do see. Oh, it's too much. But it was fascinating, and I didn't know all these details. And I wondered, well, did I really need to know so many details? I mean,
that's a good question. Let's explore that. The answer to that question is another question. Do you feel any weight lifted off your shoulder?
Well, information, I always like to get information, but it's heavy and it's hard and it hurts. And it's just, I just want to find a way out of this. And we can talk about all this wrong and all that has happened, but where is the solution? I wake up early in the morning, think about so much, and then I wonder, where's the solution? Why don't we have a solution?
Well, the true solution to it all, is that and within you knowing, you don't operate with anger, because anger creates this confusion while you're out in society.
Yes.
Okay, so what you've witnessed here is black on black crime, white on white crime, white on black crime, and white on white crime, Indian on Indian crime, Indian on black crime, white on Indian crime. You just witnessed it all. There was no direct of a solidarity type of situation like they tried to put in our brain with Roots, right? They tried to tell you.
I never watched that.
Well, I'm just saying, we know the gist of it, right? And the gist of Roots is the gist of what we've been educated by when it comes to American history is that white was slave masters, black was slaves. That's it. They created a racial situation with it. Within reality, there's a survival situation, and that survival situation was created before racial laws was put in place. And that survival situation was all the activities in the Caribbean and the ocean that did evolve into and did start out as a racial situation. But it's real difficult. Like, it was a racial situation. It wasn't a racial situation. They made it a racial situation. Then there was a bunch of interracial children coming up out of here. So what do we do with the interracial children? We send them to France. We send them back over here. They're denied over here. They create revolution. It's insurgents everywhere and insurrections occurring. What can you do? Like I said, welcome to the fog. Welcome to the haze. This is the mist and the mystery. Look at that, huh? The word mist is in the word mystery, right? Right. The fog of the ghost ships arriving at the coast. This is what that is, okay? And I wouldn't have been able to comprehend none of this stuff unless I went through the medieval first.
Right.
You see. So the true solution to it all is that you should be able to walk higher. When I walk out in public and people see the way that I walk with a firm confidence. There's no sluggish of the shoulders. There's no Mr. Alcifer. There's no none of that with how I communicate and the way I conduct myself. And everything moves out the way for me, you know, get him, you know, front row seats, you know, I get all of that type of stuff. And it's because I've done the due diligence, because I care, I give a fuck about humans overall. You know, I give a fuck about my race. So I have to figure out, how did this shit get to the way it's gotten? You know, where did the confusion stem from? How did the confusion get to develop? How complex is the confusion? You see what I'm saying? So
is there a way that it can be used for good and not bad, but something similar, you know?
well, like I stated earlier, and that's before you walked in, there is no good and bad when we understand how the Loas operate. There is achieving the goal. You see, and you do whatever ferociousness or whatever angelic acts that you need to commit to achieve the goal. You see?
Okay,
I
Keenan.
like how you said that, and I'll try to use that going forward with all the other information that you said.
Right. Well, your headquarters financial, I see down here. So you understand some ferociousness and some angelic acts. That's why, you know, corporations, they conduct a lot of ferociousness in the boardroom, right? And then what do? Oh, we have to set up the foundation. We have to give the donation to the children for the front side, for what they see on TV, right? But they don't show that, oh, we got a whole sweat camp over here, slaves over here in Korea doing our work. You know, they don't show you that part, you know, but they give the donations to the children in the orphanages, supposedly. You know, it's a balance of things, you know, you can't run away from it, you know. I mean, what do you expect, you know? I mean, lions got to rip guts out of gazelles, you know, and plants get pissed and shitted on. I mean, that's just existence.
So,
Okay, Keenan. It
Yeah.
seems like all this stuff that you're talking about, I don't see nothing's changed. It's just like this stuff is being recycled as we live.
Well, that would go back to the metaphysics of the slave ships. Do we have desire? I desire this. You see, I desired to know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I desire to know too. That's why I'm in the class. But
Right,
from the
exactly.
information that you're giving me, I don't see where anything has changed from that time to this time. It's just that we are different people. I see that we have been chopped up in our minds so layered until we don't have a connection to the past. They have manipulated to where we cannot follow the trail to the past to make a complete connection of how to dissimulate what is going on.
Well, the only thing that's changing between then and now would be technology and our availability.
I
Okay.
disagree, Steph, because here's the rub. What you have learned and experienced has changed you. You just haven't gone outside to have the biofeedback yet, but you're different because you have new information that now nothing can be, the wool can no longer be pulled over your eyes. You're smarter, more in depth, and have a higher frequency than most of all the people now that you can currently know. That's including your children, your spouses, your parents, your extended family, the neighborhood. Everywhere you go now, you have this energy, this frequency of knowledge and wisdom that gives you a power, superpower, and an energy and a foresight that you didn't have before. So I disagree with that. It's nothing.
The DNA has changed a little bit.
You have changed.
Yeah, the DNA has changed. Right.
We can't
right.
go back now. Once the mind has been expanded, it cannot contract back to its original form.
Right.
You can't undo intelligence. If you are ignorant and you become intelligent, you can't go back to ignorance again. You can understand ignorance like a language, but you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it.
Okay, that's
so
there.
what's
I
visible, what was invisible now is visible to you. That's a superpower.
Okay, I get that. I understand, Philippe. Thanks.
You know.
Sure.
And
sure.
I mean, technology has altered our environment and how we perceive things. I have to give credence to the fact that I probably wouldn't have been able to get this information without an eBay or without the access of the internet. Reverend Shock asks a lot of the times why the other scholars haven't gotten into this. But here's another thing. A lot of the books that I have bought on the eBay come out of your local libraries.
Yeah.
The average,
Right.
yeah, they come from your local libraries. Nobody was reading. It was
Right.
down in the basement. I bought the book for $5. So
For
the black
The
male,
difference between what Keenan is saying is so true. The difference between, and I say this all the time, but I know we get emotional about our scholars and elders and all of that. Like, you know, you do reverends and stuff and you get all in your damn feelings about it. But here's the rub. I ask questions that other people don't either want to ask or don't know how to ask. And I know how to seek. There's a process called shock, seeking higher omnipotent conscious knowledge. And that conscious knowledge is allowing me to see a Keenan Booker. Right? So everybody else couldn't see him or didn't want to, because the other thing that happens when you get older, and I hope this doesn't happen to me, I'll be 60 in a few years, that I'll get set in my knowledge ways and not want to take on any new information every day.
that's that mental congestion zone right there.
Love them, yeah, but I am a sponge for finding ish out. And I have to give it to Dr. Edwin Nichols. He said philosophy is the highest of all science. It's this, and Keenan also came back and said that the philosopher asks how and why questions. The lower frequencies ask who, what, when, and where. So as a philosopher, it's my job to find the cause for the effect. Some of us, many of our scholars, are just regurgitating an effect with another effect, never finding the origins or the cause.
We were dependent upon what our parents were telling us and how society was built, and just went to universities. We didn't have an in-depth desire, you know, like I stated, a lot of these
told
books.
What to do. We didn't have a desire to do it.
I've lived in many cities. I've seen many ghettos, and here's the rule. There's a basketball court next to every library. So the black male, yeah, they're all designed.
That's true. That's true.
The black male, he wants to swing the limbs at the court. He does not go inside the library to want to know why things are the way they are. And then at the same time, all of this could just be destiny. And, you know, we were designed to do what is being done at the time it was done. It wasn't meant for prior scholars to find this information out. You know, it was meant for me to possess prior scholars, as my name Keenan in Islam means possession, and it also means business. And I took all the prior scholars and I possessed them and made a business out of it. It's called Millennium DVDs. I got all their lectures right over there. Yosef Ben Yakin and everybody, John Henry Clark, everybody, Francis Cresswell, and I got all of their stuff, you see. But then it was time to go for what they didn't go. I saw the common trend. And the common trend was you went to universities, and also the black audience does not accept those who did not get knighted by the university. So here I am, the rogue, the outlaw, who brought you the outlawed information. And that's just the life I have to live. I mean, you know, Sister Murphy here couldn't handle the information. I wrote the information. So what you think my brain is being rocked by? You see, like the Kicked Out of Heaven, the medieval, I had to read over 100 books, and I read them about 5 times a piece. And the same stuff with this the Voodoo edition. You know, I've lost relationships. I've lost a lot, you know, and my books ain't, you know, they haven't flown off the shelf in sales. You know, a lot of people are very intimidated by the way I've titled them, or what's on the cover, or the nature of the content, so on and so forth, you know. So that's just my position, man, you know. But go ahead. I know something's on Hinton's mind. Come on.
Yes, always, because I think that because when it's so much and it's so horrific, you know, women are looking for a fix it.
Fix this shit.
And because we're looking for a fix it, because you see, in the past, we could stand by our man. See, now we don't have a man to stand by because that man is all over the place, figuring out who he wants to stand by, but he don't want to stand by us. When I heard you say something about the African American being engineered from a specific thing, and why I can't find it, I have no idea. Maybe I took it as that. I don't know where it came from because I thought I wrote it down. I think it came after you all were talking about the hidden signal. And then you went into, and that, the epigenetics of that and the pheromones and the code switching and
The scent of fear.
I still don't see it.
The scent of fear that we were talking about with the pheromones?
No, there was something specific that was stated about the African Americans learning something about division.
About division?
Yes. Now, I don't know.
When I was talking about the black shots?
Black shots.
The merchant,
This was going to be carried on. This idea of this division was going to be carried on.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the well, I was talking about the Code Nor and the law.
Yes.
Yeah, the Code Nor and the law that was put in place for black males and females not to be our children will be bastards.
Yes.
Throughout time. And so go ahead.
Okay, so what happens when I see something like that? So it identifies the psychology of relationships to me. A lot of people, many don't honor and adore their children.
Right.
They treat them like bastards, like a dog.
Right.
Because they don't they're not guiding them into a purpose.
Right.
And you keep reminding everybody because there's no desire. So when you don't have no desire and your children are born accidentally because you don't honor yourself, you take away your morality because of what? Because you don't use your brain?
Right. You don't have we don't have desire. We don't love. But go ahead.
I think when you see something and hear something and it's your everyday life and you're seeing it, you kind of don't know what you're seeing at a time. And it's almost like, well, this is my new normal. And at the same time, what am I looking at?
Right. Love requires a lot. So there's a lot of other emotions.
And I know what I want.
Right. There's a lot of other emotions that's embedded inside the space of love. So you have passion, you have desire, you have attainment, you have protection, you have security, you have research, you have discovery. All of these things are inside love, and there's many, many, many more. emotions that and compensate that. And if you
So-
really want to get down to it biologically, because there's a biological science to love. And if the child is not breastfed, and if the child is not born vaginally, they do not have the capacity of love. Period. So let me ask you, how long have you been hearing black males talking about some, you still smell like Similac? So you've been drinking Similac and Enfamil for how long? Which is a substitute for breast milk, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just giving you the immediate, if you want to break this cord. The immediate break of this cord is breastfeeding and being born vaginally. No C-sections. C-sections separate the communication in between the infant and the mother. The lack of breastfeeding tells the child that they've been denied by their mother to be breastfed, and they've been replaced and supplicated with a plastic bottle. Okay. And also, you're not holding the child close for the warmth factor. Okay. So when you do not breastfeed, and when you are delivering children through C-section, you have created demons biologically, and they do not have a comprehension of love, nor can they reciprocate it.
Unfortunately, everything is saying.
Yeah, I've studied this. This is human behavior sciences, and human behavior and psychology and
40 some odd
sociology.
year
Go ahead.
nurse. Absolutely
Yeah,
correct.
Creation of a devil.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Right.
If the labs showed that, and I think I talked to I don't know who I was talking to before, but, and I got to hurry this up and get out of here, family. But to end this, to close on this, tests were done where, oh, I know why. When I was last week, when I was not present, I had to go to the hospital. So that's where I was going. So I had to go to the hospital, and they had to run some tests because I was having some issues. And come to find out, everything was completely clear. But what was fascinating is that I smoked, 3 cigars, maybe 4 cigars a day. My lungs had no indication that I was even a smoker. And so the reason for that is because of the breast milk, but the love that you can overwrite your DNA. And so there was a test done where in the lab, the 2 mice were given cancer cells. They were injected with cancer. One mouse was loved and nurtured and stroked and hugged and fed and loved up. The other mouse was completely denied any contact, might have been treated badly, sporadic in terms of how it ate, because it didn't know when or if it was going to eat. Guess what mouse died? And what mouse not only overcame cancer, but showed no signs of the cancer tumor. And so that's just biology, family.
Right.
And that's the difference between, that's the nurture in the nature.
Right. And one of the other effects of that is to be on the reverse of what he just stated. Children who aren't breastfed have a higher percentage chance of having asthma, because the breast builds up the lungs. And that's also going back to an ancient Egyptian science, which you have heard, oh, you take the breath out of me, or taking the breath out of somebody while they're in love, because love is found inside the lungs. Okay. Right. So your breathing deals with your love capacity and all of that. So when you want to get down to it, where the true base bottom line of, and this is also deals with the attainment of weight. How many of these kids out here are looking like crack babies? Is because of Enfamil and being born through C-sections. They can't hold down weight. They're extremely skinny. You see what I'm saying? They have no muscle factor. The muscle is coming from the breast milk, the blood, and all of the stuff that's in the breast milk. So this is where it's at, until women start understanding, and then you got to look at it. We are on a situation of, we're the only beings on the planet that give our children to another being to be breastfed. We used to give them to goats and cows, straight to the udder of goats and cows during the slave times. So it's a long history of the lack of breast milk for children, and these children growing up with neglect. And you also have to understand that the largest form of child abuse is neglect, and
It's
neglect is invisible.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
it's the
All right, my
emo-
beloveds. This has been absolutely amazing. I want to give thanks to Keenan and thanks to Amma for giving us this ability to find the truth, to make visible the invisible, to make known the unknown. We've got 2 more weeks left, and I'm already feeling a deficit. We got to figure this out. This is incredible. So we end our call tonight with our affirmation. I am one with first frequency.
I am one with first frequency.
I am one with the first thought idea.
I am one with the
first thought idea.
I am one with the firstborn people.
I am one
I am one with
the
Firstborn people.
I am one with the only one.
I am one with
the only one.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
And so it is. Let me say this:
I'll
if you want to get the
recording out
books,
to you within the next, I'm gonna try to get it out within the next 48 to 72 hours to everybody.
okay. And if you want to get more books, there's at theblackmansbible.com. The medieval books are at kickedoutofheaven.com. If you have any further questions, you can contact me at KeenanBooker83@gmail.com.
Fantastic. CASHAPP family.